Welcome, dear traveler, to Whispers of Warcraft. Tonight, as moonlight spills across the snowy spires of Northrend, as the cold winds of forgotten battlefields whisper through ancient forests, let us journey together into a story of glory, sorrow, and darkness. This is the tale of a prince who swore to protect his people, but in trying to save them, lost himself to the shadows. It is a legend of fathers and sons, love and betrayal, and the thin, icy line between hero and monster. So settle into your bed, feel the warmth of your blankets, and breathe softly as the world of Azeroth opens before you. Let the whispers of this story carry you into sleep, where dreams and nightmares meet. Long before the frozen winds of Northrend howled Arthas's name, the kingdom of Lordaeron stood proud. Its meadows rolled like emerald waves. Villages bustled with life. Bells from capital city rang each morning, their music rising above roofs of red clay and spires of white stone. King Arthas Menethil II ruled with a kind but steady hand. He was beloved for his wisdom and for keeping peace with the high elves of Quel'Thalas, the dwarves of Khaz-Modan, and even the mysterious night elves of distant Kalimdor. On a crisp spring day, a son was born to the king and queen. The child's first cry carried across the royal gardens. Bells tolled joyously, peasants cheered in the streets, nobles toasted under tapestries of the silver hand. In the royal chambers, Arthas held his newborn boy in trembling hands. "You shall be our hope," he whispered, "Arthas Menethil. May you never know the darkness I have seen." As a child, Arthas loved nothing more than galloping his pony across the palace grounds. His laughter echoed through gardens, chasing sparrows from hedgerows. He adored his mother's gentle stories at bedtime, tales of the light, brave heroes and dragons that slumbered beneath snowy peaks. When he fell from his horse one rainy afternoon, bloodied and crying, his mother kissed his tears away. "Bravery is not never falling," she told him softly, "but rising every time you do." Arthas clung to those words all his life. At 13, Arthas began training under Uther the Lightbringer, one of the greatest paladins in the history of the Silver Hand. Uther was massive, his shoulders broad as a mountain, his voice like distant thunder softened by kindness. Each morning, they sparred in the castle's wide courtyard. Servants paused their work to watch the prince and the champion clash, wooden blades ringing under dawn's pale light. "Again!" Uther barked, blocking a clumsy strike. "Your anger makes your swings wild. Patience, Arthas. Feel the light's presence even when rage clouds your mind." Arthas scowled but obeyed, determined to earn his mentor's approval. On lazy summer afternoons, Arthas and his friends ran through the city's lower streets, dodging carts and laughing. They fed pigeons near the cathedral and listened to traveling bards recount tales of heroes past. In the evenings, the royal family dined in candlelight. King Arthas would smile as Arthas recounted stories of his day. His mother's soft eyes glowed with pride. But as the years passed, her laughter grew rarer. Illness crept into her bones, her hands trembling more each day. On cold nights, Arthas sat by her bed holding her thin fingers. "I'll protect you," he promised her softly. "I'll protect everyone." When Arthas was 10, his mother passed into the light. Snow fell that morning, blanketing the palace in cold silence. Arthas knelt beside her still form, tears freezing on his cheeks. His father wept openly, clutching Arthas to his chest. That day, something changed in the boy. He looked out from the palace balcony at his sleeping city, and swore no one else he loved would ever be taken from him by sickness, war, or anything else. Years later, a delegation arrived from Dalaran. The young sorceress, Jaina Proudmoore, among them. She was brilliant, quick-witted, and unafraid to challenge Arthas's every boast. They sparred with words by day and lingered together beneath star-filled skies by night. One evening, they snuck out past the city guards, running barefoot through dew-kissed fields until they reached the old watchtower. Together, they watched dawn's first light spread across the hills. "What do you want for the future?" she asked quietly, fingers tracing his. "A world worth living in," he answered, eyes serious. "A world where you and I never have to be apart." She smiled, leaning into his embrace. In that perfect moment, it seemed peace would last forever. As Arthas neared his 22nd birthday, dark rumors drifted south from the Plague Lands. Villages near Andorhall reported strange sicknesses, fevers that took entire families within days, bodies that rose at night with empty eyes. In the halls of Capital City, King Tyrannus's council argued late into the night. Merchants pleaded to keep roads open. Clerics demanded quarantines. Arthas, listening in silence, felt rage rising inside him. Outside the council chamber, he found Jaina waiting, worry written across her face. "What will you do?" she asked. "Whatever it takes," he answered, voice low and fierce. Within days, Arthas rode out with Uther, Jaina, and a column of knights clad in polished steel. Snow fell in gentle flurries, blanketing the land as they crossed into the northern reaches. They passed farms with fields of rotting crops. Wolves scavenged among bloated cattle. Silent villages loomed like empty shells. At night, they made camp under dark, starless skies. Jaina spent long hours studying strange runes found on crates of grain. Arthas sat beside her, firelight flickering across his troubled face. "Do you ever wish you were someone else?" he asked quietly. She looked up, surprised. "Someone with no duty, no war, all the time." He nodded, but his eyes burned with determination. "I can't afford to wish. I have to act." When they arrived in Andorhall, the streets were eerily empty. Doors swung in icy winds, hinges creaking. Blood spattered the walls of homes. In the town square, a horse lay in frozen slush, its ribs showing through sunken skin. Jaina gasped as they entered a tavern. Entire families sat at tables, faces contorted in final screams, food still on plates. A scraping sound came from the cellar. Arthas descended with Uther at his side, torches casting dancing shadows on stone walls. A figure crouched over a corpse, chewing. Its head snapped up, eyes milky white, mouth dripping black ichor. With a roar, Uther swung his hammer, holy light erupting in the darkness. The creature's body disintegrated with a hiss. In the town center, robed figures gathered in a circle, chanting. At their head stood Kel'Thuzad, tall and pale, his eyes gleaming with unholy light. "The Lich King's gift will free this world," he proclaimed, voice echoing. Arthas stormed forward. "Kel'Thuzad, I will see you hang for this." Kel'Thuzad spread his arms, laughing as cultists attacked. Swords clashed with daggers. Spells lit the square in flashes of gold and violet. Uther bellowed prayers, each word burning ghouls to ash. Jaina summoned shards of ice to spear cultists through the chest. Amid the chaos, Arthas reached Kel'Thuzad. Steel met dark magic. Kel'Thuzad staggered as Arthas's blade pierced his ribs. The necromancer fell to his knees, blood bubbling from his lips. His last words rattled like dry leaves. "The frozen throne awaits." Silence fell over Andor Hall, broken only by crows cawing from rooftops. Arthas stood over Kel'Thuzad's corpse, breathing raggedly. Uther placed a hand on his shoulder. We did what we could. But Arthas shook him off. "It's not enough," he said, eyes cold. "We're fighting a war we don't understand." In their camp outside the ruined town, Arthas and Uther argued long into the night. "You acted recklessly," Uther snapped. "The light teaches us patience." "Patience is what let this plague spread," Arthas shouted back. "Patience is weakness." Jaina tried to intervene, voice shaking. "Please, both of you, stay out of this, Jaina," Arthas snapped, instantly regretting the hurt in her eyes. Uther's voice softened, but his words cut deeper than any blade. "I've taught you all I could, Arthas, but I fear I've failed you." That night, Arthas dreamed of a frozen wasteland. Snow fell in endless darkness. A massive spire of jagged ice loomed, the wind whispering his name. Arthas. A figure emerged from the storm, a king clad in black armor, eyes glowing blue like baleful stars. In his hands a blade of black steel pulsed with icy mist. "Who are you?" Arthas called into the dream. The figure's voice was colder than death. "I am your destiny." Arthas woke with a start, breath misting in the dawn's chill. They pushed onward, following signs of infected grain through the countryside. At every village they found only death, bodies stacked like cordwood, children with eyes frozen open, rivers running black with rot. Each horror hardened Arthas's resolve. "We must cut this sickness out at the root," he told Jaina, eyes fierce. "But at what cost?" she asked softly. Word reached Arthas that Stratholme, jewel of Lord Erin's north, had received a shipment of grain from Andor Hall. He urged his knights forward, riding day and night. Snow began to fall heavier, blanketing the pines and muffling hoofbeats. As they approached, the city's walls rose from the mist, lights glowing behind narrow windows. The bells rang cheerfully, the air filled with laughter of a festival in progress. But Arthas saw none of the beauty, only the specter of death stalking every smiling face. On the outskirts of Stratholme, Arthas gathered Uther, Jaina, and their captains beneath a snow-laden oak. The knights shivered, shifting uncomfortably as the prince paced before them. "The plague is already here," Arthas said, voice grim. "This city will fall, and thousands more after it if we do not act now." Uther crossed his arms. "What are you saying?" Arthas's eyes were ice. "We must purge Stratholme, kill every soul before they rise." Gasps echoed among the knights. Jaina stepped forward, tears already shining. "Arthas, these are innocent people." Uther's voice thundered through the snow. "I will not lead men in slaughtering their own countrymen." Arthas's face darkened. "Then you are no longer fit to command." His words fell heavy as tombstones. "By my right as crown prince, I relieve you of your command and disband the Order of the Silver Hand." Uther looked like Arthas had struck him. Without another word, he gathered those who would follow him and rode south, banners limp in the wind. Jaina lingered, looking up into Arthas' eyes, desperate to find the boy she once loved. "Don't do this," she whispered. "Please, I have to," he said hoarsely, turning away. Arthas led his knights into the city, just as dawn painted the sky in bands of gold and crimson. Bells rang from the towers, calling the faithful to morning prayers. But the knights came not to pray. They kicked in doors, swords flashing. Families screamed. Some convulsed in moments, the plague quickening within them, black veins bursting as they fell. Others pleaded for mercy, only to meet the cold steel of Arthas's blade. Fires broke out, smoke rising into columns. Church bells turned from songs of worship to a funeral knell for thousands. Through alleys and markets, Arthas moved like a storm. His face was a mask of resolve, each strike measured, his men hesitating until they saw his example. Pools of blood spread across cobblestones. The sweet smell of roasted meats mingled with the acrid stench of burning buildings. Above the city, crows circled, cawing as they watched the prince's purge unfold. Outside the city walls, Jaina stood gripping her staff. Tears streamed down her face as orange firelight reflected in her eyes. She could not bring herself to enter. Turning away, she mounted her horse, her sobs swallowed by the storm as she fled south, heartbroken. "Arthas," she whispered to the cold wind, "what have you done?" In the city's central square, Arthas found Mal'Ganis standing calmly amid the carnage. The Dreadlord's eyes glowed like embers. "Impressive," he drawled, clapping slowly. "You have done my work for me." Arthas roared, charging, but his sword passed through the demon as he dissolved into shadow. His voice drifted on the wind. "Come to Northrend, little prince. There you will find your true destiny." Arthas emerged from Stratholme at dawn, face hollow, armor stained black with soot and red with blood. Snow fell softly as he looked out over the forest beyond the city. To his men, he spoke only 3 words: "Prepare the fleet." They obeyed in silence, afraid of both what they had done and what their prince had become. Arthas's fleet sailed into a steel-gray sea, icebergs drifting past like ghostly sentinels. Snow fell in silent veils, muffling the cries of gulls. Nights were endless. The northern lights shimmered green and violet above the ships. Arthas stood at the prow, eyes fixed on the horizon. Each night, he dreamed of frozen spires and a voice calling his name. Arthas. The fleet beached on a rocky shore beneath towering cliffs of black ice. Winds screamed through jagged peaks. Arthas's men huddled around meager fires, fear in every glance. Muradin Bronzebeard, dwarven explorer and old friend of Arthas, approached the prince in camp. "What madness drove you here, lad?" he growled, beard crusted with frost. "This is no place for the living." "I'm here for Mal'Ganis," Arthas answered, eyes hard, "and I will not leave until he lies dead." Their first days were hellish. Ghouls emerged from snow-laden woods, tearing men apart in swirling blizzards. Frost wolves stalked the night. Arthas and Muradin rallied what soldiers they could, building crude walls from logs and frozen earth. By torchlight, they pored over maps stained with blood and ice. Muradin pleaded, "We can pull back to the ships." "Live to fight another day." "No," Arthas hissed, "this ends here." One midnight, Muradin took Arthas aside, voice low. "I've found something." A cave of ice, with a sword said to be forged by death itself, Frostmourne. Arthas felt a chill deeper than Northrend's winds. That name rang through his dreams. Frostmourne. Muradin's eyes were wide with fear. "The blade is cursed, lad. Even legends say it steals souls." Arthas' voice was flat as stone. "If it will grant me the power to end this plague, then I must have it." As his men suffered frostbite and despair, Arthas sent orders back to Lord Dairon, demanding reinforcements. When his father recalled the ships instead, fearing for his son's safety, Arthas snapped. He ordered his own mercenaries to burn the fleet, stranding his army on the frozen continent. Muradin watched the ships blaze with horror. "You've doomed us all," he shouted. Arthas turned on him, eyes wild. This is the only way to victory. Led by ghostly whispers, Arthas and Muradin climbed treacherous cliffs to a cavern of blue ice, its walls glittering like diamonds. The air inside was so cold it burned their lungs. At the heart of the cavern stood Frostmourne, embedded in a spire of dark crystal. Runes flickered across its blade like dying stars. A hollow voice filled the cavern. "Return the blade and claim your destiny." "Don't do it, lad," Muradin begged, eyes wide with desperation. "This sword's evil. There's no saving yourself if you take it." Arthas barely heard him. The whispers grew louder. Images flashed before his eyes. Lord Aaron burning, his father dying, Jaina weeping. He stepped forward, armored gauntlet reaching. With a roar, Arthas shattered the crystal holding Frostmourne. Ice exploded outward, shards slicing into Muradin's head. The dwarf crumpled with a groan. Arthas caught the rune blade as it fell free. Cold, more absolute than death, flooded his veins. Frostmourne whispered, "You are mine now." Arthas staggered, his soul tearing, but he felt a dark strength rising. The blizzard outside howled like an exultant chorus. Arthas emerged from the cavern, Frostmourne trailing mist. His soldiers shrank from him, eyes wide. He marched to the ruined keep where Mal'Ganis awaited. The Dreadlord sneered. "You have done well, Prince. Now—" Arthas cut him off with a howl of rage, Frostmourne slicing the air. Their duel cracked frozen walls, each strike ringing like thunder. Finally, Arthas's blade sank deep into Mal'Ganis' chest. The demon staggered, face contorted with shock. "He owns you now," Mal'Ganis rasped before disintegrating into shadows. With Mal'Ganis dead, Arthas gathered what few men remained. They looked upon him with fear and awe. He did not sleep as they built crude rafts, Frostmourne ever at his side. The voyage home was silent. Northern lights danced in the skies like cold spirits as they sailed south. Word reached Lord Aeron of Arthas' fleet on the horizon. Bells rang in capital city, banners unfurled, and flowers rained from balconies as the people prepared to welcome their hero. Arthas rode through the city gates in polished black armor, Frostmourne resting across his saddle. Cheers rose in waves. Children ran alongside his horse. King Tyrannus stood upon the grand balcony of the keep, arms spread to welcome his son home. In the grand hall of white marble, braziers burned bright as nobles gathered in anticipation. King Tyrannus sat upon his throne, eyes moist with relief. Arthas walked the crimson carpet, boots clicking with each deliberate step. "My son," Tyrannus began, voice filled with pride and love, "you have returned to us. Tell me, how fares the north?" Arthas looked up slowly, face blank. Frostmourne whispered, "Complete the circle." He drew the blade. Gasps filled the hall as steel sang through the air. Tyrannus' eyes widened, disbelief frozen upon his face as Frostmourne pierced his heart. The king fell back upon his throne, crown tumbling to the marble floor with a ringing note that echoed through the shocked silence. Blood spread across the dais, dark and warm. Arthas stood over his father's body, eyes empty. "This kingdom shall fall," he whispered. As night descended, the city erupted in screams. Plague carts rolled through cobbled streets, black fumes spilling out. Corpses rose from alleys and graveyards, clawing doors and dragging shrieking citizens into the dark. The royal guards tried to rally but were quickly overwhelmed. Church bells rang in panic, their bright tones turning hollow among the moans of the dead. Above it all stood Arthas, watching from a balcony, the wind tugging at his cloak. The crown of Lordaeron lay crushed beneath his boot. Arthas rode east through the ravaged countryside to Andorhal. There, he exhumed Kel'Thuzad's rotting corpse, flies buzzing thick around the necromancer's remains. Beside a black carriage, Kel'Thuzad's ghost appeared in a swirl of frost. "Bring me to the Sunwell," the spirit crooned, voice echoing like a tomb. "There I shall rise again." The scourge spread like a plague of locusts across the eastern kingdoms. Villages burned, rivers ran red, survivors staggered south, haunted by the shrieks of the risen dead. Birds flew in great black clouds from the north, sensing death's triumph. Knights who once served Lord Aeron rose as death knights, eyes glowing blue beneath rotting helms. The Silver Hand survivors gathered desperately in Hearthglen and South Shore, but their lines were thin, their hearts heavy. Arthas led his army of undead south and east toward Quel'Thalas. Frostmourne thrummed with each step, runes glowing brighter. In the forests of Eversong, elven rangers ambushed the scourge. Arrows fell like rain. Arthas rode through them unfazed, each bolt shattering harmlessly upon his blackened armor. High walls of white stone rose before Arthas, the gates of Silvermoon shut tight. Archers lined the battlements, golden eyes blazing with determination. Arthas stood beneath the walls, voice cold as winter. "I will have the Sunwell," he proclaimed. Battering rams of stitched flesh and bone smashed the gates. Abominations tore through barricades, ghouls scaled walls like spiders. The High Elves fought bravely, blades flashing, but for every scourge slain, 2 more took its place. Ranger General Sylvanas Windrunner commanded the city's defense, her voice sharp as steel as she led her rangers from tower to tower. In a final stand at the inner gates, she faced Arthas atop a crumbling bridge. "Monster!" she spat, loosing arrows faster than mortal eyes could follow. They shattered against his armor or deflected from Frostmourne's dark edge. With a roar, Arthas charged. Frostmourne struck true, cutting deep into Sylvanas' side. She fell to her knees, breath ragged. He stood over her, voice soft and cruel. "You will know endless torment." Dark magic poured from his hand, tearing her spirit from her body. Sylvanas' ghost shrieked as it twisted into a banshee, bound to Arthas' will. Arthas pushed deeper into Silvermoon. Marble archways lay in ruin, crystalline spires cracked and toppled as the scourge surged through elven streets. Fires burned in gardens once tended for millennia. Statues of the Sunstrider dynasty fell, shattering on the marble courtyards. Golden-armored high elves fought to their last breath, their blood staining snow-dusted stones. Arthas barely glanced at their sacrifice. In the center of the city, the Sunwell shimmered within a circle of golden columns. Its waters pulsed with ancient magic, light radiating from every ripple. Kel'Thuzad's ghost floated above the pool, a ragged wraith of frost and shadow. "Cast me in," he commanded, voice hollow and eternal. "Let my form be reborn." Arthas lifted the necromancer's corpse, bones wrapped in torn robes, and hurled it into the Sunwell. The waters churned black, brilliant light turning sickly green. Lightning cracked overhead as dark energy exploded outward, toppling columns. A wave of necrotic force swept across Silvermoon, killing hundreds of surviving elves instantly. From the roiling, corrupted waters rose Kel'Thuzad, his skeletal form wrapped in ice-blue robes, eyes burning with baleful light. His laughter rolled through the ruined city like thunder. "My prince," Kel'Thuzad rasped, voice now unearthly and powerful. The scourge shall sweep across this world. Far from Silvermoon, groups of refugees fled south, ragged and desperate. Prince Caelthas Sunstrider, learning of the Sunwell's defilement, knelt in grief among the ashes of his homeland. He swore vengeance on Arthas with every breath. Arthas turned west toward Dalaran, the floating city of mages. Crimson-robed wizards gathered in towering halls, poring over ancient tomes scrying the scourge's advance. Arcane wards flared to life above city gates. Archmage Antonidas, wise and white-bearded, stood atop the highest spire, staff raised against a darkening sky. "We stand at the edge of doom," he told the gathered archmagi, "but we shall not let Azeroth fall without a fight." The scourge reached Dalaran's walls. Frost worms swooped from storm clouds, icy breath shattering battlements. Plague catapults hurled blighted corpses over enchanted barriers. Mages rained meteors upon the undead hordes, but for every skeleton shattered, more clawed their way from icy earth. In the city's heart, Arthas climbed the steps of the Violet Citadel, the ground blackened behind him. Antonidas awaited, staff blazing with violet energy. "You've led your people to ruin, Prince," the Archmage said. His magic exploded outward, searing lines of molten stone into the plaza. Arthas raised Frostmourne, deflecting the spells. He advanced through arcane fire, eyes locked with Antonidas. Their final duel raged across the marble steps. Steel rang, runes pulsed, spells shattered pillars. With a roar, Arthas drove Frostmourne into Antonidas' chest. The Archmage gasped, light fading from his eyes as the rune blade devoured his soul. With Antonidas dead, Kel'Thuzad began the ritual atop the city's grand plaza. Black clouds swirled into a cyclone. Thunder shook the heavens as runes etched in fell light blazed across the stones. A colossal portal opened. Through it stepped Archimond the Defiler, demon lord of the Burning Legion. His horns curled like black iron, his eyes pools of green flame. Kel'Thuzad bowed low. "Dalaran is yours, master." Archimond raised a clawed hand. Energy pulsed through him, and the city's spires disintegrated in a storm of violet and gold, ancient towers exploding one by one. Archimond gathered his dreadlords atop Dalaran's smoking ruins. "Hyjal," he growled, voice shaking the skies. "The world tree shall fall, and with it, this world." But Kel'Thuzad, standing by Arthas, whispered coldly, "Our master, the Lich King, has his own plans." With Dalaran burning behind them, Arthas led the scourge southward. Forests withered where his armies passed. Rivers turned black with disease. Villagers fled in ragged columns, chased by ghouls and banshees. Across the world, nations shivered in terror, whispers of the Death Knight Prince spreading like wildfire. Archimond marched on Kalimdor. Demonic infernals fell from the sky, cratering ancient forests. Felguards trampled orc and human outposts. The Night Elves, reclusive watchers of the wilds, emerged from the shadows to join the mortal races in desperate alliance. On the slopes of Mount Hyjal, Thrall's orcs, Jaina's surviving humans, and Malfurion's night elves built fortifications of stone and wood. Siege towers belched fire against burning sky. Dryads and druids called storms and roots to slow the legion's march. The night air was alive with fire and screams. Orcs charged with axes. Trolls loosed arrows from treetop platforms. Humans formed shield walls. Night elves leapt between branches, blades flashing. The legion responded with waves of fellhounds and doomguards. Atop Hyjal, Archimond approached Nordrassil, the world tree, reaching out to drain its power. Malfurion, staff raised, called upon the spirits of the forest. With a whispered prayer, the druid unleashed an ancient spell. Thousands of wisps flooded the mountainside, swirling like living light. They wrapped around Archimond, pulling him apart with a blinding roar. Archimond's body exploded in a wave of fell fire. Flames engulfed the forest, but as they died, silence fell. The Burning Legion's second invasion had failed. In the twisting nether, Kil'jaeden raged at Archimond's death. He summoned Illidan Stormrage, outcast demon hunter and brother of Malfurion, offering him the Eye of Sargeras. "Destroy the frozen throne," Kil'jaeden hissed. "Shatter the Lich King before he grows too powerful." Illidan sailed north with Naga led by Lady Vashj and blood elves loyal to Prince Kael'thas. They landed upon Northrend's frozen coast, blades gleaming in the pale sun. Illidan's sorcery cracked glaciers, his armies sweeping through undead encampments. Frost worms shrieked above the battle, but Illidan pressed on, determined to fulfill Kil'jaeden's command. Far away, Arthas felt the Lich King's pain as cracks formed in the frozen throne. Frostmourn's whispers became frantic. "Hurry, or all shall be lost." Arthas gathered what remained of his loyal scourge, boarding black-sailed ships bound again for Northrend. As the northern lights rippled above, he stepped once more upon icy shores, the cold welcome of fate itself. Illidan and Arthas met upon the icy slopes of Ice-Crown Glacier. Snow fell in thick veils, howling winds muffling roars of battle between Naga and undead. Illidan's blades, the twin blades of Azeroth, flashed with fell energy. Frostmourn's dark runes pulsed cold blue as Arthas parried, steel striking steel in showers of sparks. They circled each other like wolves. "You are nothing but a pawn," Illidan spat, "a slave to the voice in your head. And you," Arthas hissed, "are a traitor to everything you once loved." They clashed again. Ice shattered beneath their feet, blows ringing like thunder. With a final, vicious strike, Arthas plunged Frostmourne into Illidan's chest. The demon hunter fell, blood steaming on the ice. Arthas climbed the broken steps of the frozen throne, each one slick with centuries of rime. Snow and lightning swirled around him. At the summit, a block of jagged ice loomed. Inside it, a dark figure sat upon a throne of frost. "Return the blade," the Lich King whispered. "Claim your destiny." Arthas raised Frostmourne high and smashed the ice. Shards flew in every direction. A helm of black metal, crowned with icy spikes, rolled to his feet. He picked it up, breath coming in ragged clouds. Frostmourne's voice fell silent, replaced by a deeper, older whisper. Placing the helm upon his brow, Arthas felt his soul tear in two, merging with Ner'zhul, the spirit of the Lich King. His eyes blazed blue, brighter than stars. His heart fell silent, frozen forever. A wave of necromantic power rolled across Northrend. Frost worms rose from icy graves, shrieking into the night. Dead warriors climbed from glaciers, kneeling before their new master. Arthas sat upon the frozen throne, one gauntleted hand upon Frostmourne's hilt, the other resting on the armrest of his icy seat. From his perch above the world he watched the storm gather. "Now," he murmured, voice echoing in the storm, "let them come." For years after Arthas ascended the frozen throne, Northrend fell into unnatural silence. Glaciers groaned in the darkness. Frost worms glided across moonlit skies. Death Knights, once noble paladins, trained in the icy halls of Ekarus, their rune blades singing of doom. In the ruined kingdom of Lord Aeron, banshees wept over black fields. Abominations patrolled twisted roads. The land itself seemed to rot under the Lich King's shadow. Suddenly, the silence shattered. Frost worms swept south over the dragon blight. Necropolises floated above the eastern plague lands like hungry vultures. Ghouls rose from forgotten graves in Tirisful. All across Azeroth, the Lich King's forces prepared for war. In Akaris, the Eben Hold, Death Knights were awakened from crypts of black iron. They staggered to their feet, eyes burning with cold blue light, hearts dead yet filled with the Lich King's will. High Lord Bolvar for Dragon led the combined armies of the Alliance and Horde to the Wrathgate at Angrathar, Ice Crown's main gate. A blizzard howled as soldiers took their positions. Bolvar raised his sword, his voice booming across the frozen plain. For the glory of the Alliance, for the light. The gates of Angrathar opened, and the scourge poured forth. Skeletons in rusted armor, giant undead spiders, and towering abominations. The clash of armies rang through the mountains. Suddenly, the Forsaken's grand apothecary Putris appeared on a rocky ledge. His voice rose over the carnage. Did you think we had forgotten? Did you think we had forgiven? Green clouds of plague roared across the battlefield, killing human, orc, and undead alike. Soldiers choked and fell as flesh sloughed from their bones. Bolvar's armor blackened, flames engulfing him as he refused to yield. Above, the Lich King watched impassively. As the plague burned through the ranks, he turned away, leaving both Horde and Alliance reeling. At Light's Hope Chapel, the Lich King sent his Death Knights to crush the last bastion of the Argent Dawn. Tyrion Fordring, clad in silver and wielding the Ashbringer, met them with righteous fury. As Tyrion called upon the light, a blinding wave of holy power washed across the battlefield, searing the scourge and shattering the Death Knight's connection to the Lich King. Freed from his grasp, they staggered back in horror at their own deeds. Darian Mograine, son of the Ashbringer's first wielder, fell to his knees. "What have we done?" he whispered. From that day, the Ebonblade swore to destroy the Lich King. Tyrion united the Argent Dawn and the Order of the Silver Hand into the Argent Crusade. With the Ebonblade as unlikely allies, their armies began the long march north, crossing frozen seas and battling scourge strongholds. In the frozen halls of Naxxramas they faced Kel'Thuzad himself, the Lich's laughter echoing as he fell a second time. Frost worms fell from the skies in Dragonblight, cut down by the combined might of champions from every race. In Ice Crown, the Lich King sat upon his throne, watching as his enemies advanced. He raised his gauntleted hand. Ice Crown Citadel, a towering fortress of black iron and frozen stone, burst from the glacier, its spires stabbing the sky like knives. Banners of the scourge unfurled. Frost giants stirred from beneath the ice. The final battle was approaching. Tyrion ordered the construction of the Argent Tournament near Ice Crown's base, a grand arena where champions would train and prove themselves before facing the Lich King. Here, heroes bested each other in duels, jousts, and tests of courage. But the tournament drew scourge attacks night after night. Death Knights, Banshees, and Bone Dragons fell upon the encampment, only to be driven back by shining paladins, cunning rogues, and resolute mages. The Argent Crusade, the Ebonblade, and champions of the Alliance and Horde gathered before Ice Crown Citadel. Snow whipped around their banners. Siege towers rumbled over ice. War horns sounded across the glacier. Tyrion raised Ashbringer to the stormy sky. "For Azeroth!" he cried. The citadel gates, carved with skulls and frozen bones, opened wide. The scourge poured forth. Ghouls, Volker, bone dragons. Champions charged to meet them, steel flashing in the blue gloom. Inside Ice Crown, the walls were black serenite, lined with frozen corpses trapped behind glassy ice. The Forge of Souls roared with the screams of the damned. Champions fought undead smiths forging weapons from screaming spirits. In the pit of Siren, prisoners labored beneath the lash of undead taskmasters. A colossal skeleton rose from the ice, each step shaking the ground. Heroes brought it crashing down, freeing the captives. Near the frozen throne, Sindragosa, queen of the frostworms, burst from the glacier. Her roar shattered stone and split the air like thunder. Icy breath froze heroes in place. Her tail sent the strongest warriors flying. But slowly, heroes learned her patterns. They danced between waves of frost, shattered her bones with spells and steel, and finally, Sindragosa fell with a final, echoing shriek, her wings folding around her as she crashed. The champions crossed a narrow bridge over a chasm swirling with the souls of the damned. Frost spirits rose from below, clawing at their legs. Valkyr swooped down, lifting warriors high before dropping them to their doom. One by one, heroes overcame these horrors, pressing on toward the frozen throne. At last, they reached a wide platform atop the citadel, wind howling like 1,000 ghosts. In the center sat the frozen throne, Arthas upon it. His eyes glowed like blue stars, Frostmourne resting across his lap. Tyrion stepped forward, voice ringing, "Your reign ends here, monster." Arthas rose, his cold voice filling the storm. "So be it." Arthas swung Frostmourne, dark energy exploding across the platform. He called upon the souls trapped in his blade, summoning Valkyr and raising fallen champions to fight for him. "Look upon your future," he roared, "and despair." Wave after wave, heroes fell only to be revived by healers or magic. The Lich King's power seemed endless. The blizzard intensified until the world was a blur of white and blue. At last, battered and blooded, champions brought Arthas to his knees. But he laughed, a low, bitter sound. "So easy to lead you here," he said. With a wave of Frostmourne, he unleashed a blast of death magic. Every hero fell lifeless where they stood. Arthas stepped among the corpses, triumphant. "Now, you belong to me," he whispered, raising Frostmourne high. But Tyrion, frozen in a block of ice during the battle, called upon the light with every ounce of faith left in his soul. The ice cracked, then shattered in a blaze of golden light. Tyrion charged, Ashbringer raised. With a cry that echoed across the glacier, he struck Frostmourne. The rune blade shattered, shards flying like falling stars. Souls burst free in a maelstrom of pale light. Among them appeared the spirit of King Arthas Menethil II. Tyrannus's ghost floated to his son's side, catching Arthas as he fell to his knees, blood seeping from under his armor. Arthas's eyes were wide, voice ragged. "Father, is it over?" Tyrannus cupped his son's face with a ghostly hand. His eyes were sad, but kind. "At long last, no king rules forever, my son." Tears welled in Arthas' eyes as the world faded. As the storm calmed, Tyrion lifted the helm of domination from the ice. Without a Lich King, the scourge will destroy Azeroth, he realized. But before he could act, Bolvar for Dragon, burned and scarred for the Wrathgate, but alive, stepped forward. "There must always be a Lich King," Bolvar said, voice hoarse but resolute. "You must tell them the Lich King is dead, and that Bolvar Fordragon died with him. Tyrion hesitated, then slowly placed the helm upon Bolvar's head. As the helm settled, blue flames flared behind Bolvar's eyes. Ice crawled over his shoulders. He sat upon the frozen throne. Snow began to fall gently. "I will keep them in check until the end of days," he vowed. The champions gathered the bodies of the fallen. The scourge shambled without purpose across the glacier. A hush settled over Icecrown. From the towers of the citadel, no new darkness came. The greatest terror Azeroth had ever known was over. But deep in the frozen throne, Bolvar kept silent vigil, the world safe for now, until the next shadow rose. In the days after Arthas's fall, snow fell softly upon Icecrown, blanketing the shattered citadel in a hush of white. The champions of Azeroth gathered their dead and departed in silent ships, sails limp in the cold wind. Where once the drums of war thundered, only the soft keening of the Arctic wind remained. Far to the south, Jaina Proudmoore stood on the shores of Theramore. In her hands, she clutched a silver locket containing a portrait of Arthas as a boy, smiling with all the hope of youth. She pressed it to her heart, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I loved you once," she whispered to the restless sea. "I hope, somewhere beyond, you remember who you were." In the halls of reflection, the shattered pieces of Frostmourne lay sealed away. On quiet nights, Tyrion Fordring heard a voice echo through the halls, the ghost of Uther the Lightbringer. "If the helm is destroyed," Uther's spirit warned, "the scourge will run rampant once more. Balance is all that holds the dead in check. Deep in the forests of Tirisfal, Sylvanas Windrunner, free at last from Arthas's will, stared into campfires with eyes full of vengeance. Her banshees flitted at the edge of shadows. She whispered to the dark, "One day I will see all who wronged me suffer." High atop Icecrown, Bolvar sat upon the frozen throne. Frost crept across his armor. Ghostly blue flames flickered behind his eyes as he stared into an endless storm. He thought of his family, the warmth of Stormwind, the pride of soldiers who once served him. Those days were gone. "Another will come," he murmured into the howling wind. "But until then, I will keep them in check." Months passed. Snow drifted over the frozen scars of battle. The scourge, now mindless, shambled aimlessly, unable to rise in organized fury without a master. Farmers returned to their fields in the south. Children played in castle courtyards again. The world, for a time, knew peace. In inns from the Borean tundra to Booty Bay, bards sang songs of the boy prince who loved too fiercely, fought too hard, and fell too far. They told of his desperate love for Jaina, his fierce loyalty to his kingdom, and his tragic choice to embrace darkness to save what he cherished. Parents told their children of Arthas so they would remember that sometimes evil does not come in the form of monsters, but of hearts that break, twist, and lose their way. And tonight, dear listener, as the winds of Northrend die down and stars blink across the midnight sky, remember, even in the coldest night, hope can be found. It is never too late to turn from darkness, never too late to protect those you love. Thank you for joining Whispers of Warcraft, where legends are told softly and every shadow has a story. May your dreams be peaceful, your night restful, and your heart warmed by the light you carry within you. Good night, traveler, and sleep well.